Pulling a packed suitcase out of the dirt in your own parents' backyard is a jarring way to end a grueling 3-day work trip. But finding a handwritten note taped to the handle signed by your younger sister, telling you that you are no longer wanted, that your room has been given away, and that your presence is an insult to the family, hits harder. I didn't scream. I didn't call my parents to beg. Instead, I picked up my bags, swallowed the suffocating lump of humiliation, and drove straight to the secret apartment I had bought years ago. That 3-hour drive back from the client site should have ended with unlocking the front door, kicking off my shoes, and collapsing onto the couch. I had spent 72 straight hours reviewing logistics data, fixing client errors, and running on cold coffee just to wrap up the project early. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, the house was dark except for the porch light. But my chest tightened the second I stepped out of the car. My 2 heavy suitcases weren't by the front door. They were sitting right in the middle of the damp backyard grass, flanked by 3 cardboard boxes containing every single personal item I owned. Attached to the handle of my main bag was a piece of neon pink stationery. My sister Chloe's handwriting. Crisp, bold, and dripping with venom. "We cleaned out your room," the note read. "Mom and Dad finally realized you're just dead weight dragging this family down. Chloe took your space for her new design studio. Don't call, don't come back inside, and don't expect a single penny or a piece of sympathy. You're done here." I stood there under the cold night sky, staring at the plastic bins. I had worked 2 jobs for years to help pay off my parents' mortgage and fund Chloe's college tuition. I had sacrificed my own savings, my own free time, and my own comfort to keep everyone afloat. And this was how I was repaid? Thrown out like trash while I was away earning a living. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my mother. "It's for the best, sweetie. Chloe needs room to grow, and you need to learn to be independent." Not a single question about where I was. Not a single ounce of hesitation. They had chosen her side entirely, erasing my years of sacrifice with a single text message. My thumb hovered over the reply button, ready to type out an angry defense, to remind them of every bill I paid and every late night I worked for their comfort. Instead, I deleted the draft. I didn't call. I didn't text back. I went completely dark. I loaded the heavy suitcases and cardboard boxes into the trunk of my car, the metal scraping against the frame in the dead silence of the night. My hands were steady, though my stomach felt hollowed out. Let them think they had won. Let them sit in their comfortable ignorance. I pulled out of the neighborhood and drove downtown, bypassing the familiar streets and heading toward the River District. 20 minutes later, I parked in the secure subterranean garage of Harbor View Towers. I walked up to the private elevator, tapped my key fob against the security panel, and pressed the button for the 22nd floor. Unit 2204. A sleek, fully furnished luxury 2-bedroom apartment overlooking the city skyline. I hadn't told a single soul in my family about it. 3 years ago, when I started taking on high-paying freelance consulting gigs alongside my regular job, I decided to invest in a place of my own, a private sanctuary, just in case things at home ever boiled over. Tonight, that foresight was my salvation. I unlocked the door, stepped inside into the quiet, pristine darkness, and let the heavy door click shut behind me. Standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my high-rise apartment, looking out over the glowing city grid, the numbness finally wore off, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. How had it gotten to this? How had my own family turned on me so completely while I was away working? I dropped my keys on the marble counter and pulled out my laptop, opening a spreadsheet I hadn't looked at in months. As an operations analyst, my entire career was built on tracing patterns, finding hidden liabilities, and auditing systems that looked fine on the surface but were rotting underneath. And suddenly, looking at my family's financial history, the terrifying truth stared back at me. This wasn't a sudden impulse by Chloe. It was a calculated, long-term operation. Over the past 3 years, Chloe had systematically poisoned my parents' perception of me. She had convinced them that my quiet demeanor meant I was weak, that my long hours at work meant I was neglecting them, and that every financial contribution I made was just my basic obligation as a lesser member of the household. More than that, I found digital footprints, bank transfers, Text screenshots my mother had accidentally synced to our shared cloud storage and property documents. Chloe had been quietly moving to have the family home deeded entirely into her name under the guise of taking care of our aging parents. My years of paying the mortgage, handling insurance, and buying groceries weren't appreciated. They were just funding the runway for her complete takeover. They didn't just want me out of the house. They wanted me erased, so I could never lay claim to the assets I had practically built with my own sweat. The humiliation I felt earlier evaporated completely, replaced by a cold, burning resolve. They wanted a ghost? I would give them one. But when I finally decided to haunt them, they wouldn't know what hit them. Over the next 48 hours, I transformed my high-rise apartment into a command center. If my family and Chloe wanted to play a game of legal and financial chess, I was ready to show them how an expert operations analyst actually clears the board. I started by pulling every single bank statement, receipt, and tax document from the last 5 years. Every wire transfer I sent for the family mortgage, every utility bill I covered, every car payment I made for Chloe when she got her first job, it was all meticulously tracked, time-stamped, and organized into digital folders. Next, I dug into the legal ownership of the family home. It turned out that while I was away on my last business trip, Chloe had somehow convinced our aging parents to sign a quitclaim deed transferring co-ownership entirely to her, completely bypassing the verbal family agreement we had lived by for a decade. But there was a massive oversight on their part. The initial down payment for that house back in 2018 had come entirely from a separate account bearing my name alone, backed by a formal loan agreement signed by my father. Legally, they couldn't just strip my financial stake without triggering a breach of contract that would jeopardize the entire property title. I didn't stop at the house. I looked into Chloe's lifestyle. For someone who claimed to be a struggling young designer needing a studio space, she drove a brand new luxury SUV and frequently posted luxury vacations funded by a mysterious secondary business account. Digging deeper using public corporate registries, I found that Chloe had been routing small, unauthorized supply chain stipends from our father's small manufacturing business into a shell company under her own name, essentially siphoning company funds right under his nose while he was distracted by her flattery. By Sunday evening, I had built an airtight dossier. I had the financial records proving my monetary contributions, the legal proof of the property manipulation, and the evidence of Chloe's corporate siphon scheme. They thought I was just a quiet sibling they could toss aside with a neon pink note in the dirt. But they had completely underestimated the person who kept their entire financial ecosystem breathing. I scheduled a meeting for Tuesday morning with our family attorney, Mr. Harrison, and quietly prepared for the final phase of the turnaround. Let them enjoy their Sunday night peace. The storm was coming, and they wouldn't see it until it tore their world apart. Tuesday morning arrived with a crisp, heavy silence that contrasted sharply with the storm about to hit. I didn't go to work. Instead, I dressed in a sharp charcoal suit and met Mr. Harrison, our family attorney, in his downtown office. We went over every page of the dossier, the property deeds, the bank statements, and the evidence of Chloe's financial siphoning from our father's business. Mr. Harrison looked over the documents, adjusted his glasses, and whistled softly. "This isn't just a family dispute," he said, shaking his head. "This is actionable fraud and a clear breach of property rights." Armed with formal legal notices, we drove out to my parents' house by noon. The element of surprise was absolute. When Mr. Harrison knocked on the front door, it was my mother who answered, her face instantly dropping when she saw me standing beside the lawyer. Before she could stammer a protest, Chloe came strutting down the hallway, holding a cup of coffee, looking smug and entirely too comfortable. "What are you doing here?" Chloe snapped, crossing her arms. "I thought we made it clear you aren't welcome." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell or lose my composure. I simply stepped past them into the living room where my father was sitting bewildered in his armchair. Mr. Harrison laid out the documents across the coffee table, the original loan agreements proving my stake in the house, the quitclaim deed irregularities, and most damningly, the printed transaction logs of Chloe siphoning funds from the family business. My father's face went completely pale as he looked at the numbers. "What is this?" he whispered, staring at my sister. Chloe's smug expression shattered in a single second, replaced by blind panic as she realized her entire house of cards had just collapsed. The fallout was swift and absolute. Confronted with undeniable legal proof and the threat of corporate investigation, my father forced Chloe to immediately rescind the fraudulent property transfer and step away from the business. My mother tried to call me later that evening, crying and begging for forgiveness, claiming she had been manipulated and didn't know the full extent of what Chloe had done. I listened in silence, but I didn't budge. I told them that actions have consequences, and that the trust they so easily threw away in the dirt outside couldn't be stitched back together with a few tears. I didn't move back into the family house. Instead, I officially transferred my ownership share out, taking a clean financial buyout that funded my next chapter. Chloe found herself completely cut off, her luxurious lifestyle vanishing overnight as the reality of her choices caught up with her. Today, I still live in my quiet, pristine downtown high-rise. I built a life that is entirely my own, free from toxic manipulation, quiet betrayal, and ungrateful expectations. Some relationships cannot be repaired, and some doors must stay locked. Walking away was the hardest choice I ever made, but it was also the most freeing.